Welcome to this week's episode of the CPG View, the #1 CPG information source for global omnichannel leaders. Awesome. Adam, thank you so much for joining this week's episode of the CPG View. I know when we reached out to you, you said, "Hey, I'm not totally in the CPG space, but I can promise you a lot of what we're going to talk about today is super relevant for the audience." So just wanted to greatly extend appreciation, and then I wanted to see if you'd introduce yourself and the company you're with.
Yeah, so my name's Adam Robinson. My company is actually in the CPG space. It's just I started another product line a year ago that's the same sort of base technology, but like aimed at a B2B sales and marketing audience. And I've literally spent all of my time on that for the last 18 months. So like I have one executive meeting per week that's about the business that sells to e-com is actually much bigger, but it's just not what I'm spending my time on. So that's a qualification there. And that company is called, well, the whole company is called retention.com. And we do website identity. So for e-commerce companies like Warby Parker, for instance, they were one of our first customers. They put a script on their site. Someone hits the website, doesn't fill out a form. We can figure out who probably like a third of them are. And then it just helps with a lot of very valuable workflows. So like abandoned cart, abandoned checkout, abandoned product, abandoned site, abandoned, whatever you can put behind abandon. There's a core problem where Warby needs those people to be logged in to know who they are. Most people are not logged into Warby Parker when they go buy glasses. That's just not a thing that happens, right? So we can expand the audience of people that get those flows to people outside of those people who are logged in. So that's basically the problem that we solve for e-com. And then the bigger the company gets, like the more we can do for them because the more they use data. We have a bunch of data plays that like someone the size of, let's say, American Eagle, they're like running this super complex tech stack and they want like we can give them a persistent identifier that is not an email address that they can send to, where they can follow people around, and there's a million things they want to do with segmenting. So yeah, that's what we do.
Love it. Love it. No, that makes total sense because as I was doing some research ahead of our call, I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, Adam, maybe he was just having an off night when he told me that, but I'm sitting here looking like this is super relevant for the space. I was looking at retention.com, and then I also want to talk about the new venture you've been working on, which is also super rad. I spent some time on that as well.
The B2B one,
Yeah, super. Want to dive into that. So like as we think about this, you have had a diverse career. I feel like sometimes when I tell people about my career, they're like, "Oh, that's like you've done some things," but like actually feel like I'm very underwhelmed in my experience now after I looked at yours. So I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your experiences, your entrepreneurial journey and what brought you to where you are today with both retention.com as well as our B2B.
Yeah, so like I graduated college in 2003. People were not, that was like after the first internet bubble bursted. It was not an environment where you could just like have no experience and go raise hundreds of thousands of dollars and start a startup like you can today. Very different environment. You know, I knew I wanted to make money, so I got a job at an investment bank called Lehman Brothers. The job that I got was trading credit default swaps. And, if you want to know about that job, watch this movie called The Big Short, because that's literally what I was doing. And then the funny thing is I show up to New York, and in this apartment I'm living in, some guys were actually doing this startup thing, and they were building this website called Vimeo. First day I got there, making a homepage on this thing called Dreamweaver, which back in 2003, everybody used to design websites. So yeah, I like kind of got the entrepreneurial bug from watching these guys. I don't know how to describe it other than like it was like their whole life was like MTV Cribs, basically. You know what I mean? Like that's what it felt like, or like Real World or something like that. And I was like, man, I want to like start a startup and work with a bunch of young, cool people in this apartment, that I was in with them. So yeah, after the financial crisis, I like started this. I had saved a lot of money because that job was a really good one to have for probably like 3 or 4 years. I just did way better than I thought I was going to trading credit default swaps. So I'd saved some dough, and I was like, kind of like had this in my mind, this like business school fund. I'm like, I'm gonna just like take money that I would take to go to business school and like try to start a startup, whatever that means. And man, it was it, you know, I made it work. Like it was so hard. It's just like there's zero transferable skills between,
Yeah.
especially if you're not even raising money. Like if I was like doing a venture back startup, I think that job actually does get you to where you can talk to investors and like you sit down with these guys who went to Stanford and be like, well, here's a spreadsheet about why this is going to work. I actually have a buddy who started a startup the same time I did and never really got product market fit, but he was able to raise $40 million over 13 years on this next big idea that he had each
Mhm.
time subsequently. And he always just had like one or two enterprise clients paying him like $1 or $2 million a year for that whole time. And then eventually, the musical chairs sort of stopped and he didn't have a chair
Yeah.
and it's over. I'm glad I didn't take that path. But the point is, man, there's really nothing similar about sitting on your own, trading credit default swaps and like creating and marketing software and building teams that do that.
Yeah.
So it was just a brutal journey, man. I don't know how else to describe it. It was really so like I
Oh,
left finance in 2011, got the first product out in 2014. I got it to 3 million ARR pretty quick and like it got stuck there and it was profitable though and I just sort of
and was this the retention.com
this was
product?
called Robly. It was a newsletter app. So
Okay.
retention.com started as a feature in Robly. I thought it was going to help us grow the newsletter, and it didn't.
Got
It
it.
didn't help us grow the newsletter app. People were using the identity feature and putting it in Klaviyo and saying it was awesome. So like we spun it out, connected it to everything. That became retention.com. And then a year ago, almost to the day, we decided to make one of those we sold to ecom or sorry, that we sold to B2B instead of just ecom. So like rebuilt it instead of resolving to a personal email, it resolves to a LinkedIn profile. And that business is now at 5 million ARR. And yeah, so I'm like a relentless bootstrapper, all about product. I'm like love like loud, aggressive marketing,
Yeah.
and I'm spending a lot of my time making LinkedIn content, trying to figure out like how to position, this world is so crazy now. People can build shit so fast. They're copying
So fast.
everything. Like
So
it's just
fast.
like, I got this incredible founder brand on LinkedIn. So like that's a decent moat, but it's like, how do I position this thing to make it to where, people don't just like look at the RB2B script on someone's website and tell
Yeah.
them that they can do the same thing for less,
Totally.
which,
Totally.
you know,
Yeah, no, I mean, your story, I mean, like, and we graduated the same year. You have much better genes than me from a hair perspective, so you got that going for you. But yeah, like to your point, and so you spent almost 10 years in finance. I mean, probably a little bit less, but you were in finance for a good run, and then you moved over and you got the bug, and you never left. I wanted to ask you what excites you the most about the work you're doing now with retention.com as well as our B2B? I would love it if you could actually double click on what you just said of the LinkedIn, like that's super interesting. What the our B2B product does. And is there anything, is there any one big opportunity that you're particularly excited about or passionate about as you think about the next few years ahead?
yeah. So like we sell to all these e-com brands and a lot of them have been founder led, influencer led, whatever you want to call it. Like there is an organic social media brand that then had a product sold into it or a suite of products sold into it. And I think with the way the world's set up, that if you get the right alignment between the founder creator and the product and the audience, I just can't imagine a more efficient marketing channel than that. It's like everything else is going to look 100 times worse. I think that's just what the machine is like set up to make you kind of worship higher status individuals and then do whatever they say, right? So I've seen a bunch of examples on ecom of brands doing that. I've only really seen one on the B2B side. And it was this Russell Brunson guy,
Mm-hmm.
and his audience was these internet affiliate marketer dudes, and he had this like absolutely, unbelievable go to market, which was like edutainment was the top of the funnel, and then he'd like sell people courses on how to grow their business that like and he'd bundle a year subscription to his SaaS into it. So I can't, I tried doing something like that last year. It doesn't really work for me for a lot of nuanced reasons, but like the point is just the same, a lot of the same dynamics exist on the audience front on the B2B side as the D2C side. Like people are living on social media regardless of who they are, right? And like every social media platform makes you worship the high status individual who's ahead of you and teaching you and all of that stuff, right? So the thing I'm most excited about for myself is like now that I find myself in that position, which was not by design, I just like kind of started doing it to like market the ecom company, and then it sort of pivoted to like, holy shit, people love my B2B content. Actually started writing only B2B content to see if we should make a B2B product to sell. So like literally it was audience first, which is like
Yeah.
everybody talks about how great it would be if you did that, but it's like hard. It's you know,
Hard,
because it's
super
like
hard.
yeah, because
Super
it's like
hard.
it's just not the way you do it most of the time. You know, it's because it's so hard to build a good product, actually a great, not a good product. It's easy to build a shitty product.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to build a great product. But a great product is what you need, or you're going to die.
Hmm.
That's just my thing.
Yep.
And then great marketing actually needs a great product. Great marketing with a shitty product
Yeah.
is a one-time sale. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? People get really big when they have both, right? So like, I'm trying to make our product better. And then just, for me personally, it's like, how far can I push this D2C model in B2B, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's exciting because most people don't get to 5 million ARR in 12 months.
Yeah.
They're pumped if they get to one, right? And like, when they get to one, they've probably raised a couple $1,000,000 and have 20 people working there, and I have five.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? It's
Yeah.
because I have this LinkedIn machine, which is the strength of a 50-person marketing team. Like the trust and awareness that I've been able to build over the last year and a half in this world is wild. So like, if I can just keep improving this product and then sort of keep tweaking the content and like getting my sales leader to start posting, it's like, how can I widen the aperture of that? This is what like I think is like the coolest, you know, thing going on in my life right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I actually found you from a similar, so super the 20-second version of this is five plus years ago, I started sharing content on LinkedIn that to me is like super nerdy, dorky charts and graphs around market sizing and segmentation and e-commerce.
Yeah.
What I quickly started to realize is people found it interesting. Well, I just kept doing it. I kept posting, and I think I've posted probably every other day or every 3 days for the last 5+ years.
Yep.
And to your point, um, we then built a professional networking organization off the back of that. We then started a podcast on the back of that. We then started a newsletter, maybe to your first company on the back of that. So yeah, to your point, I agree with you. And you're doing an awesome job at what you're doing, which is different than what we're focused on, but we're doing kind of similar things. I could see how you would be like, oh crap, like this is actually people are finding this interesting almost as a surprise. And then you start to double down and triple down on it. And I think that is also pretty rad that you have built this thing. To your point, I know many founders that never get past a few million ARR and they have 100, a 50-person team, a 75
Right.
person team. And even if they're
Yeah.
all in whatever other country, that's still dollars and paychecks that need to,
And a fucking headache, bro. Like
yeah,
50 people is way more than 10 times harder than five. It's
yeah,
like a
I love it.
thousand times
I
harder than five.
love it.
I got, so our whole company's like around 30 million ARR, and I
Yeah,
got 40 people. And like, let me tell you, I got a great executive team, but
yeah,
like us learning how to handle those 40 people, it took like a year working with an executive coach. Now I think everybody at our company would be like, it is a calm and clear environment. But
yeah.
like, I mean, we went from like under 10 to 50 very quickly, and now we're at 40. But and like it was horrible for everyone.
Mm,
Horribly chaotic. We didn't know how to manage. We didn't know how to set clear expectations. We didn't know how to set deliverables. We didn't know how to set, like, it's just we didn't know how to do it. So
yeah,
like I think most people who are early stage and have big teams don't. How would you? You know,
Yeah.
it's not
Right.
a really intuitive skill for most people on how to like properly manage someone who is not who doesn't see the world exactly like you do. Every
Yeah.
once in a while someone does. Usually they do not. And you have
Yeah.
to learn how to work with those people.
No,
Yeah.
totally agree. So I wanted to ask you, you built this machine. I think you said, 30 million in total ARR across the companies. You built some really interesting companies. What's been maybe best practice you can share to build lean, high growth, profitable, that's a trifecta business.
Yeah.
And is there any advice or a pointer that you'd give to entrepreneurs looking to bootstrap their ventures like you have?
So like, do you know who Paul Graham is?
No,
He started Y Combinator, which is this like big Silicon Valley accelerator that like every big startup went through. I mean, Facebook didn't, but like Airbnb, Dropbox,
got it.
Stripe, like, you know, it's super famous in like my world. Anyway, this guy has this saying. Somebody asked him, they're like, what would you do if you were like starting a startup? He's like, I would maybe raise 500K and then not raise anything else. And he's like, I get to profitability and I would stay out of the Silicon Valley thing. And he's like, which is wild that this guy's been a part of more venture capital ever. And he's saying this. He's like, I would run a company where when I told people how many people I had versus the revenue I had, they would just be like, how do you do that? He's like, that's the only thing what I would optimize for. Right. So like, I'm very much wired like that, just inherently. Like, I don't know, like, and then he goes on to say, business is about two things: making things people love and making more money than you spend, right? Like, so fundamentally, those two things, if you can do that, which, like, by the way, every other industry other than tech, that's like the laws of physics. You know,
Yeah.
you're not allowed to go fuck around and
Yeah.
like raise millions of dollars with this idea and
Yeah.
then hopefully figure it out. It's just
Yeah.
not allowed, right?
Yeah.
Like, so like uh, it's just so crazy that it sounds crazy for a tech guy to say this, but like I just think that like that's business, you know? So like if you start there and then, you know, it's like, well, how do you get there in a world where everyone else is behaving differently? And I think like an illustration of how a venture-backed company looks at spending money versus how a bootstrapper does is like there's a company called Clay, which just like raised, you know, $100 million at like $1 billion valuation with like tiny AR, 30 million ARR or something. They're the hottest company in B2B right now. And like I'm friends with them.
Mhm.
And a year ago, they were like getting traction with SEO with this agency. And I talked to the SEO, they're like, yeah, Clay, we're charging them 20K a month. I'm like, I can't pay 20K a month, but like, you know, whatever. Do something for me for 10, right? So like 6 month
Yeah.
contract, whatever. And then at month 5, I'm like, dude, Varun, like, how do you know what this is doing? Like, I'm looking at this and all it looks like is incredibly expensive traffic versus LinkedIn for me. And he's like, well, does the 120K a year matter to you? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. We're going to make like $14 million of profit this year. So like, but kind of, right? Like, it's like my food budget for my family for the year, right?
Right.
For like
Yeah.
my portion of the profit is that, right? So like, so yeah. And he's like, well, dude, for us, we just raised $100 million. Like we have 70 $250,000 experiments going on. And this SEO bet I view as at this point, I don't really know if it's working. I don't really know how to tell if it's working. I'm kind of assuming that it's not going to work, but to pay another 250K for another year, the upside's so massive if it does. It's just a low probability, high upside bet I have going on. Like I don't think you can make a lot of those. You know, I'm
Mhm.
like I'm like spending a tiny amount of money on far fewer experiments, and
Yeah.
then when one works, going all in on it, right?
Yeah.
Like whereas he's like spending a much larger amount on a super wide breadth of
Mhm.
experiments,
Mhm.
and then those that work, he's just going all in on those. So that's like it's like another way to say that. That was a story, but another way to say that is like when you're a bootstrapper, the way you have to approach things is like if you're spending real money on something, it has to work.
Yeah.
Whereas like the venture model, you're very much expected to spend large amounts of money on your experiments,
Right.
right?
And you're betting on the upside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's like a philosophical difference. And it's like, and just the orientation of like, how few people can I do this with?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So there's another illustration I think about bootstrapping. It's like, I think for most people, it's very easy to not real once you have a very good product that's been in the world for a couple of years, it's hard to appreciate that there's actual like brand and inbound that's growing at some organic pace that you don't have control over. And like you get to a point where you're like, let's fucking speed this up. This is great. It's working for everybody, whatever.
Hmm.
And then you go to every avenue to speed it up. But like that stuff has like wildly diminishing returns because it's not growing the brand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the brand grows slow most of the time.
Yeah.
And brand investments at that stage are really hard to make because you can't see the ROI of them.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's like a lot. What I see is like people don't realize that the strength of their brand is like driving most of this inbound. They're like, I need to add outbound to this inbound machine. And then they have like, two outbound salespeople that are effectively just collecting, demand that was already created by this brand. And
Yeah.
they're like, I'm going to grow that team to 10. They grow the team to 10 and they're booking the same amount of demos with 4 times the people as they were before because they don't realize that this whole game is really just their brand and all this performance shit
Yeah.
is them just like snipping off
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
like that's a very long opening, but like
No, you're
a
spot on.
bootstrapper's position is like, I'm not doing any of that performance shit.
Yeah.
I'm just going to accept the fact that I may leave 10% on the table,
Yeah.
but if I try to get that 10%, it would cost literally 30 times more than I'm spending on my marketing to get that extra 10%.
Totally. Yeah.
It's
No.
like there's this big pool of virtually free customers. And then once you start layering channels on,
Yeah.
there's just a rapidly diminishing return of CAC that like if you're trying to go this super lean route, you just don't even touch that stuff.
Totally.
You know?
I don't know if have you ever met or heard of Chubby's the
I love his stuff, by the way. I want to
yeah.
start.
So we
Yeah,
were just we just had a recording with him last week, and I don't know if you guys know each other, but I want to try to introduce you to. I think you guys
please do. I
would
do
kick it
like
off.
2 weeks ago. So like I hit him up.
He's an awesome dude, and you guys speak very much the same language.
I hit him up a year and a half ago, and he wrote me back and I missed it because my LinkedIn inbox is like such a
Yeah,
shit
I
show.
think
Everybody's trying to
yeah.
prospect me for everything. Everybody's trying to ask
Yeah,
me for
I know. You
15
try to
minutes or
get
whatever.
sold all the things.
Yeah,
I'll
I,
email you and him and connect you
I
to.
would love that.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
love
yeah.
to speak with him because
Good
like
guy. Good guy.
he,
I mean, so we were talking last week and I mean, he almost said almost identical to what you just said on the inbound outbound machine, and all you're doing is aggregating what's already there anyhow. So yeah, I think you two would kick it off. I'll do that later today. So I want to be respectful of your time, Adam, and ask you maybe 1 to 2 more questions. We'll see what we can get through. Is I know you've been documenting your journey with the $1 billion challenge series. Could you share just 1 or 2 points of what inspired you to share this process so transparently, and how do you think building in public impacts your brand, your team, and the audience?
yeah. So to be perfectly honest, I mean, the reason I started doing this wildly transparent stuff is when I simply make a 1 sentence statement about what our product does, like we can identify your anonymous website visitors and get you email addresses of people that don't fill out a form. There are red flags that go up, and there are red flags related to like, how is this legal? Like, is this sketchy for me to do to my brand, whatever? So like, I'm like, how do I offset that? And it's like, what if I'm just like a radically transparent person, human, and like build trust in me that way? And I can make people like me so much and trust in everything I'm doing that they don't even think about the fact that the product is somewhat gray area. So that was the whole attitude, or that was a whole philosophy, excuse me.
Right.
And I mean, I think it's working. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
uh, I think it's working. So like that's why it really I think a reason that it works is because so few people are willing to be that authentic, particularly on, well, I think in social media in general, everyone is trying to present
Yeah.
this,
Posture.
yeah, just this
Yeah.
pristine version of themselves,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that showing the warts at all because
Mhm.
like I just really don't give a shit what almost anyone thinks, and
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a superpower. And particularly on LinkedIn, being a professional network, particularly with a SaaS at a growth stage where virtually no bootstrap company has made it to. I mean, maybe there's, 10 or 20 or 50, I don't know, but it's not a high number that have even made it that far. Everyone else who's at this stage, they have investors. If they wrote the kind of stuff that I write, the
Mhm.
investors would be like, you're fucking up the next round. Like, I cannot
Yeah.
believe you're talking about like how your business sucks and you hate
Right. Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So like some might say that's like the most me version of me that there is, which is true, but I think it's unique content. It's somewhat protected because like I just don't think many people can
I
write that
agree.
shit,
I agree. I agree, man.
Um,
Totally agree. Well, hey, I want to ask you one last question. Are you okay if we go over just a
yeah,
minute or two?
I got a couple minutes, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, this landscape of digital identity is changing pretty rapidly. Obviously, cookie-free world and cookies and this and that, all the different, things. How do you see retention.com and our B2B shaping the future of identity driven solutions? And where do you see the greatest, maybe one opportunity in SaaS over the next year or two?
I mean, those are two interesting questions. So like one of the things that we aim to do is like increasing the life of the cookie as like things are dying, and we're kind of doing that. I can't it's very difficult to forecast out 5 years. Like when I
Yeah.
started this company 5 years ago, it was only third party cookie based and those were going to die in 18 months, but I was so up shit's creek with this last startup. I was like, whatever, we'll make a couple million bucks and I'll be on the next thing. Like lo and behold, 5 years later, Google has said they're not getting rid of third party cookies, and we figured out a way to make it work even when third-party cookies like with Safari only last 24 hours. So like it's just a whole different thing. Are there risks that this whole mechanism could go away? Like I don't really think so, because if you make it impossible to track people in the like across websites, then you've just eliminated the whole open internet, and the only people that can serve targeted ads are Google, Facebook, Amazon, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So like we'll see. I think we play a little role in like helping people fight against those walled gardens, just, giving them an extra 10% or whatever, fighting against the man. But yeah, the man is oppressive, and they're gonna they're
Right.
just gonna keep doing whatever they can to
Yeah.
like extract more and more rent. And then what was the last question?
What do you see the greatest opportunity or two in SaaS over the next few
Yeah.
years? What are you
So
pumped
like
about?
I'm truth be told, I'm worried about SaaS. I was at a member of this organization called YPO. We were doing this tour of this business called Buzz Balls last night. It's like like cocktail and a ball, and they're making 1 million of these a day. It's crazy. Anyway, I'm walking around with this other dude who's got a SaaS company and an e-commerce company, like kind of real niche. They sell to oil and gas, and they sell, explosion proof. It's like an Amazon for explosion proof stuff, and then this oil and gas software. He's like a product guy, and he's been spending a lot of time with AI. And he's like, I just built my entire SaaS that I spent 10 years and millions of dollars developing in 1 hour. He's like, I just like don't know why anyone. And he's like, I think like SAP is screwed too. Like, why would somebody not just build their own ERP that does exactly what they want? So like, and then for his ecom business, he's like, we have an SEO play right now. Like, I don't know why this wouldn't all be agent driven. Like, why would you not just tell an agent to go find you an explosion proof clock, and they just go get it from the lowest? So yeah, I'm kind of worried about that. I don't know. I like if you're like, okay, well then what's the other side to it? It's like, how can you make a brand play? How can you have a data play of some sort that has like a network effect that like strengthens the data play? Yeah, really, it's like brand network effects, community, if you can
Yeah.
roll with that. But like, actually just building. And then also I think there's like some real institutional knowledge to like selling enterprise. Like after we did our first real enterprise deal, like that's not something that you can just like be one individual, show up with some AI software and like sell to American Eagle.
Yeah,
You,
agreed.
you know, like it
Agreed.
just doesn't work. So like, and I think correspondingly, like you see these really large enterprise SaaS companies ripping in the public markets while the competitive dynamic at the low end is just getting horrible, right? Like, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's something with AI. It's like something that has network effects or a data play or a
Yeah.
massive brand or community play. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
like it's like I got
that
this stuff in front of me. Like, how can I like, make it, to where it's something. All I want is something other people can't just immediately go make with AI. That's like
yeah.
what I
Amen.
consider a good opportunity, you know?
Amen. Amen. Well, this was awesome for the time. It flew by. I definitely will take you. I will make sure I do the introduction later today. And just again, Adam, you're doing a great job. Keep it up and look forward to when this airs. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the CPG View, the #1 CPG information source for global omni-channel leaders.